Resilience+RISE, the podcast. Here we are continuing our talk with Beth. In the episode one, we had spoken about her challenges with alcoholism and wherein having everything, she lost everything
Mhm.
in a span of a week, a day, whether it was a disappointment from her own family, her so-called friends walking away from her glass tower just crumbling down. And we stopped our episode wherein she realized, she acknowledged, and she got into the 30 days rehab program. How did you build your life after that?
Whew. Let me tell you, it is one of the hardest things I have ever done.
Mhm.
And, I've shared with you, I've been at 9/11. I used to run marathons like you. And I blew my back out in the Chicago Marathon at the 19th mile one year. But this will speak volumes about my personality. I'm not a quitter. So I finished that race and then I had surgery afterwards on my back. So not being a quitter was great for me professionally as a reporter because it takes a lot of perseverance and persistence and dogged determination to keep going. But personally, sometimes you have to go, this does not serve me. Alcohol is poison to me. So building myself back up after I got out of treatment, went to court, paid the fines, did all of the legal consequences, then you're kind of left with, it's just me. What now? Me and my dog, what now? And I went to the mall to apply for retail jobs. They wouldn't hire me. I went to my local grocery store. They wouldn't hire me. My house didn't sell because it was mine. No one wanted to buy it because I was damaged goods. So I was like, where am I going to live after this? I know I'm going to be evicted. And, I started sizing up bridges, to be honest with you, because I'm like, I have nowhere to turn. This is, things were dire. And I started to also go to a recovery group every day for a meeting at noon. And after the meeting, people would go get coffee and I wouldn't because I couldn't afford a cup of coffee. It was that bad. So I'm like, how am I going to eat? And always having dogs, I've used a lot of dog walkers and dog boarding facilities and doggy daycares wherever I've lived across the US. And so I thought, okay, well, I can't drive. It's the dead of a Minnesota winter. I've got my 2 feet and my brain, and I've got to be resourceful. So I went around to my neighbors, and they all know me. And I went to the ones who had dogs and said, would you let me walk your dog, for like $20 a visit? I'll walk him, I'll pick up their poop. And so when you get home from work that day, at least your dog has been exercised. And my neighbors were gracious enough and said yes. And slowly but surely, I would take on more and more and more clients. And it got to the point where they were like, could you daycare our dogs and board our dogs? I'm like, well, I'd love to, but I'm about to be homeless. I don't have anywhere to put them. And a woman who became a client, and she didn't know me from television before at all, but I walked her dogs. She said she had this old vacant warehouse, it was boarded up and in very bad shape. But she said if I wanted to go in and renovate the inside, that she would rent it to me at a reasonable rate so I could start to get back on my feet and build my business. And being broke, I couldn't hire a contractor. So thank goodness for YouTube, so I learned how to scrape paint and got everything out of this old vacant warehouse and built dog kennels. Never in my life have I done that.
Mhm.
But, when you're desperate, you do what you have to do. So I built dog kennels. And then again, slowly but surely, and by the grace of, the angels up there, I was able to turn this into really a viable business. And over 3 years, I had 11 employees. I grew it to 11 employees and it became profitable. At that time then, and this is like 2012, businesses and firms started to approach me. Hey, would you consider selling your doggy daycare? Because it's kind of a cash
Wow.
industry.
Okay.
And I'm like, sell it. What would I do with my life after this? This is literally all I have right now. And so I wasn't quite ready in the beginning, but more offers kept coming, more offers kept coming. And I believe in reading the tea leaves of life. And I'm like, okay, people keep coming back, although I'm saying no, 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 because I don't know what I would do afterwards. And finally, the offer was good enough and I was tired enough because we at some time worked up to having 40 dogs a day. And anyone who maybe has 2 or 3 dogs knows how much work that is. But 40 dogs a day every day is a lot. And so finally I became tired enough because it's very manual labor. I became tired enough. The offer became decent enough that I'm like, okay, I can, this buys me a little time so I can figure out what I'm going to do next in my life because I had a lot of ground to make up. And on the day that I was handing the keys over to the brand new owner, I got a telephone call out of the blue from KSTP, also in Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's the ABC affiliate. And they said, and by the way, this same station that 3 years prior said no to my face. We do not have a place for you. But, what's the difference 3 years later? I'm sober, and I have a proven track record of cleaning up my life and, building this business and everything that's involved with that all by myself. So they said it's an investigative producer job. It's not on camera again, like reporting, but I would be crafting and shaping stories for other journalists. And I'm like, absolutely. Because I wasn't on TV for being on TV. I love the storytelling. I loved getting into people's lives and telling the stories. And again, survivor stories, and who knew I'd become my own, frankly. But so I took that job with such gratitude and told them, I was so appreciative. And I said, I will make you proud. I'll make you proud and I'll make me proud. And that's what I said about doing after I was given what essentially was a third chance because I'd blown my first one and I certainly blew my second one. So this is my third chance. And, how many strikes do you get in life? And this was going to be it. So after picking up dog poop for 3 years, I got back into television news.
Wow. That's absolutely a story of resilience. And as I mentioned, at times life throws us curveballs, and it's our choice on what we do with those storms that come towards our life.
Yes.
Whether we build ourselves to soar above or buckle down in that space. And Beth, what you have shown is that with perseverance, with just grit and determination, where you've gone to the point that dog walking was something which you wouldn't have even thought about. And you went for it. And again, as I always say, is that angels, universe, God, it's always that there is a door which is there, but we should have the eyes to see that particular door and go ahead and open the door. So when we talk about this particular phase wherein you're raising yourself in the time of desperation and loss, I don't ask for advice because for me, advice is people don't listen to advice. But what would be your insights and suggestions for people who face challenges or setbacks, or as I put it, as that life literally throws them down to the ashes?
Yes.
What's your thoughts on this?
I think a lot of it surrounds itself with shame and stigma, and it's how we treat people with whether it's mental health or addiction issues, the shame and stigma. And case in point, I'll share how I worked around that. But when my day came in court to be sentenced, the state prosecutor wanted me to go to state prison for 90 days for 2 DUIs. And we all know people who've, not done that. But she was sending a message because of my high profile position. She could send a message to a lot of people. Hey, we're not going to, have preferential treatment for anybody. And I was scared. I was very scared because I thought, I don't know how this is going to go. And the judge, when he came into the courtroom, he asked to see me privately in his chambers before he sentenced me. And honestly, I thought this worst situation in my life is about to get a whole bunch worse, right? Like, I don't want to go face the judge. But sure enough, I go back into his chambers and he's standing there with his arms out like this. And he said, "Come here, Beth, let me give you a hug." Back in the days when we could. And, I fell apart in his arms, just bawling my eyes out. And he said, "I noticed your name come on my docket right after you got arrested. So I've been following your case the entire time. And I knew one day you would be in my courtroom." And he said, "I'm not going to send you to state prison." And mind you, I'd already spent a couple weekends in the county jail and some other things. But he said, "You'll have consequences." And he did send me to the workhouse, which is a labor camp in Minnesota, for several days. And, fines. And I had a laundry list of things that I would be required to do, and obviously make amends to people as well. But he said, "And I'm going to do this. You will get another shot. You will overcome this." And he said, "I believe in you." In case in point, right before you came to my sentencing today, to be sentenced by me in this courtroom, he said, "I went to my meeting and got my 20-year chip."
Nice.
And there, the judge, the person who's supposed to throw the book at me, is the one who said, "I see you. And I see what you have in you, and you can overcome this. And you can come out of it a better person." And he did ask me to make a promise to him. He said, "When the day comes, when you're ready, you need to go out there and pay it forward." So that's part of what I'm doing, because here this guy, he could have sentenced me to state prison and it would have been a notch in all of their belts, and I don't blame the prosecutor for asking for it, because she's doing her job. I kind of look at the system of, you'd rather incarcerate than rehabilitate. So the stigma is just that. It's stigma and shame. And to get past it, what I want people to know is, who've heard my story, because I did not have a perfect life. I don't come from money. I'm just a normal person who was, worked her way up the ladder and just was an everyday citizen. Except my job happened to be very high profile. A lot of people can deal with it privately, but that's not what came with my terrain. So what I want people to know about shame is, it's a word that can be used against you, or you can use to fuel yourself. And that's how I approach looking at shame. Like, okay, Beth, you've had cancer, you've been through these things, all the life challenges, the things certainly that I've seen while covering all these huge stories in this world. Like, okay, the time has come where you dig deep inside yourself. You know who you are, you know what you're worth, and believe in your comeback. You have to believe in yourself. And that's what I really want to emphasize to people, because I know the shame is so overpowering. It can keep you stuck in the corner, and it can keep you stuck in your sickness. Shame does that. But shame can also be a motivator. So I look at it as turning shame into service now. And I want to show people, you can go through, God, the worst, most excruciating, lose everything. And if you really want to turn your life around, it takes work. I wish there was, a fast forward button we could hit, but we can't. But, not to be embarrassed and humiliated anymore, that sobriety can become your superpower. And that's how I look at it. I'm proud of the fact that I could quit. And I want people watching this to go, you know what? I want to, and this is part of how recovery group meetings work. You hear someone else and you're like, oh God, I don't ever want to go back to that. Or you hear someone who's just having, their best life, living their best life ever now. And you kind of hear that and you're like, I'm going to go this way. Let's go figure out how we can start to live our best life. And really overcoming shame for me meant a couple of things. I did reach out to everybody that I hurt face to face to apologize. They remember what I did. I don't, because I was a blackout drinker, but they do. And, it's awful to have to sit down and kind of fall on your own sword, but that's what accountability is. And taking accountability also helps you get your credibility with yourself back, your self-respect.
Own self, yes.
Yeah, because you lose your self-respect along the way. And I'm like, when I'm sober, that's just not me. But that's what the drug does. When I'm drunk, I am an entirely different person. So I want people to know that the way you can also get your self-respect back is own what you did, realize in a world of relationships, and this is really important, I believe, alcohol is a taker. It's not a giver in relationship. It doesn't negotiate. And it's an equal opportunity disease, as you can see with people that you've interviewed. We're all over the map, right? And none of us were like, oh, it'll be fun to grow up to be an addict one day. That's just not in our brains. So I want people to know that sobriety can be their superpower as well. And that I'm a big believer in kind of mottos and affirmations
Okay.
because their days get hard, right?
Mhm.
So one that I just live by and subscribe to is you grow from what you go through. And I thought I can't go through all of this and rebuilding and make my life was good before. My life is 100-fold even better, living a clean life. And if you'd ever told me that was possible, I would have just not believed it. And that's so what I'm telling people at home who are watching this is believe it because I've done it. And I can show people, I look at talking about my book, Stand By, as a bridge. It's a little uncomfortable for me to kind of do the sales pitchy because I've just been a reporter my whole life. But I look at the writing this book as building a bridge between me and everybody who this might resonate with. Of like, I've been there. I've played in that fire so hard and I got burned badly. Let me show you how I came across this bridge and healed and what the cost of transformation looks like. You have to make changes for there to be transformation. And it's the price of transformation, but you build a life you don't have to escape from, that you don't have to numb yourself from.
Wonderful. So many thoughts, so many. In fact, when you were talking about the judge, there's a statement I say time and again in my podcast is that we all are angels with broken wings. That when we hold another, that's when we fly higher. At that point of time, that honorable judge came with his own broken wings and held you, and that gave you the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is that life, as I've seen it, is that even including me, I've gone through some of the pains. But from our deepest of pains shines the brightest of light, and there comes our purpose.
Yes.
You had to go through that pain. You had to go through that hurting. You had to go through that shame or however it was, so that you now become a beacon of light to many others who are in its own way struggling, or they may feel that there is what to do. And guys, stand by. That's Beth's new book. If it's not only about alcoholism, it's
No.
about growing yourself. As Beth has used the word bridging from where you are. It may be that you may be in the depths, in the muck, but how you can overcome to come to a next point of time in your life. We got standby. So, Beth, would you like to talk a little about standby?
Yes. Well, what I hope people see in the book too is that they can see themselves in my struggle, in my surrender. You have to surrender to it. And then in my strength. And it's right. It's not just about recovery. It's about, people who have regrets or who've blown up their own lives. Maybe they're going through a divorce or have lost a child or job changes, caretakers in this world of their elderly parents. They're struggling, all of that. And all of that is hard stuff. And so what I want people to understand about that as well is that difficulty doesn't destroy you. It defines who you are, So get in there, do the difficult work. And at times it's going to hurt and you're going to think, I don't know if I have this in me. I don't know if I can keep going. Well, the alternative, look behind you. That wasn't so fun. That wasn't so attractive. So face forward And every day, remember that, and I have to think the CDC ruled like way back in 1956, so the Centers for Disease and Control here, 1956, that alcoholism is a disease. So it's not in our heads. If we could stop drinking on our own, or whatever people's issues are, we would. It's not in our heads. And then in 2007, Congress passed a law also recognizing addiction as a disease. But the more you put like a day or two together, time will show you how much better in your life. Sobriety can make a big difference in your life. And for people who have trigger points, whatever they are, if it's people, cut them out of your life. If it's a place or a situation, just get rid of the trigger points. For me, it was drinking late at night after the news. So when I would get home from work, like, what am I going to do for a distraction or to fill my time? And, the witching hour, as I called it, I would start to do meal prep then, for the rest of the week. And that was very helpful to give myself a distraction and something else to do. And telling people about your problem, putting it out in the universe. And it's amazing the kind of support you'll get, because people will help people who help themselves.
Fantastic. Wow, guys. So this has been amazing set of life lessons, nuggets, however you name it as. If this conversation has stirred you in some way, do reach out and check out Standby. And if you want to connect to Beth, I've put her connection points on our comments below over here. Do reach out, because if you acknowledge that you got a challenge, there is a help. And she has gone through that particular path. She may or may not have all the answers, but she will be in a position to at least to direct you what could be the next step.
Yes. And I like to think, if I can turn my lowest points of my life into a lifeline for someone else, then all of this was worth it. You can't go through all of that for naught. There has to be takeaway, and lessons in there. And I say with a dry sense of humor about this, because sometimes you have to give yourself a little bit of levity because it's so tragic, that, if it's embarrassing, and it happened to me, it's in the book. If it's really, really embarrassing, it's chapter 42.
Well, chapter 42 that's where the marathon, for me, kilometers, that's the last point, and where you can push yourself to get across the finish line. And what we heard was her wounds, her pain, but how she rose to where she is today. And she's bold enough to stand up and shout out to the world, this is my book, this is my story. I am not ashamed of where I am, who I am. So Beth, thank you so very much for your space and time. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so very much, and best wishes as the journey continues. And guys, stand by on the shelves.
If you it's don't everywhere mind, books are sold, and it just came out on Kindle. And what I also encourage people is, I'm not hiding behind my shame and stigma anymore. And I hope by coming out, I can encourage them to also stop hiding.
Beautiful. Acknowledgement, surrender. Beautiful. Thank you, Beth. Thank you so very much.
Thomas, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me share the message.